I do understand from some monasteries who hold like ordination in Taiwan, they do not have to do ordination because this year we still have one participant from Taiwan. She took a higher ordination, I can't remember which year, but she came. In fact, for this year we do not want to accept those who have taken higher ordination because he told us that she does not have to do ordination for the people who Sangha as well as apply to request for the ordination again because she wishes to do ordination. So I'm not too sure whether in some of the monasteries in Taiwan, does every monastery practice a do ordination?
I don't know whether in Korea you follow the Dharmagupta Vinaya, do you? Dharmagupta, Sufan Yes? So, I just want... Sufan Okay, anyway, I just wanted to say that according to the Dharmagupta Vinaya, and only according to this, as far as I know, a bhikshuni ordination conferred only by bhikshus is considered valid, but only in particular circumstances. So, from the Dharmagupta point of view, the Chinese lineage is valid. I don't know whether it is valid or not from, for instance, the Theravada point of view, but from their point of view it is valid. This is because in the Dharmagupta Vinaya, there is written that the ordination conferred only by bhikshus, only by bhikshunis, is not valid. But there is no mention about the ordination conferred only by bhikshus. So they give it for granted that since it is not mentioned, it is valid. And moreover, there is this Buddhist scholar, Gurna Varman, who spoke about the possibility for bhikshunis to receive the ordination only by bhikshu if there are no bhikshunis in the area. And according to this, according to that, how do you say? Nowadays, nuns in China thought that even if it is valid to receive ordination only by monks, since now the world has changed, since now yes, it is possible to travel around and whatever, there is no reason anymore to have ordination only by monks. And so they wanted the Arpus NG again. So I think, I don't know what it was in Korea, but I don't think that it is of such importance because if they have the Dharmagupta Vinaya, that's the same. You understand? So I just wanted to point this.
Is there any other questions for the panelists? Yeah, would you like to come up?
I just want to say one thing on the Korean ordination. We could get some light on the Korean ordination since Japanese Buddhism came through Korea. The oldest forms of Japanese Buddhism came right down the peninsula. And the ordination that is done in Korea is the same as was done in the 6th century when the Japanese received Buddhism through Korea. So it's an unbroken chain since the 6th century AD. So the Korean tradition is very ancient, and they didn't change. The only reason they changed and have been having problems is because of the occupation of Japan into Korea when they disrupted the Sangha, and the Koreans, mostly the Chogichong order, have purified the Sangha, both the Bhikkhu Sangha and the Bhikkhuni Sangha, when they excommunicated the sect that was a married sect.
Is there any other questions from the audience here for the panelists? Do you have any announcements?
T-shirts?
Oh, the T-shirts?
Yeah.
No, I guess not.
I don't see the T-shirts. So, no, I guess that's it.
That's it, huh? Okay, if there are no further questions, let's adjourn for lunch. Thank you.
Our Cambodian coordinator, Mr. Bobby, to explain about the invitation of Cambodian participants. There has been some talk that Cambodian participants were not allowed to attend our conference. I would like to clarify this matter.
Thank you very much, Nishi. It is very regret that some notice has brought to me that some Cambodian nuns have said that the other Cambodian nuns are asked to participate in this conference.
ខ្ញុំចង់សូមជម្រាបជូនចេះការអញ្ជើញចូលរួមសម្រាប់ភ្ញៀវក្នុងស្រុកហ្នឹងយើងមិនមែនឆ្ពោះទៅរកតែដូចជាទេ
I would like to clarify that the invitation is not just intended to only the nuns.
យើងបានរៀបចំអញ្ជើញដូចជាខ្លះអង្គការក្រៅរដ្ឋាភិបាលដែលធ្វើការជាមួយនឹងពុទ្ធសាសនាខ្លះហើយនឹងអង្គការក្នុងស្រុកខ្លះ
We actually invited some nuns and some local NGO representatives who have been involved in women and other international NGOs that is involved in also women affairs.
ហើយយើងបានត្រៀមកម្លែងសម្រាប់ភ្ញៀវក្នុងស្រុកគឺមានពី30នាក់ទៅដល់50នាក់នៅកម្ពុជា
And we also reserved the places or invitations for the local participants in our list.
ប៉ុន្តែនៅពេលដែលយើងឃើញក្នុងឱកាសនេះមែនតើភ្ញៀវអត់បានចូលរួមតាមកំណត់ទេ
But as we can see here, not all of the people who were invited have been participating in this conference.
ហើយខ្ញុំចង់សូមជម្រាបជូនភ្ញៀវទាំងអស់ថាខ្ញុំមានបទពិសោធន៍ច្រើនណាស់នៅក្នុងការរៀបចំសិក្ខាសាលាឬមួយក៏ពិធីផ្សេងៗនៅក្នុងកិច្ចការសម្រាប់ជាតិ
And I would also like to tell you that we have encountered a lot of difficulties in organizing conferences or workshops or other activities.
ភ្ញៀវខ្លះអត់បានអញ្ជើញមកចូលរួមគាត់ថាអូអ្នកចុករវល់អ្នកថាចុកទៅធ្វើបុណ្យចុកអញ្ចេះចុកអញ្ចឹងប៉ុន្តែដូចជាមានអ្នកផ្សេងដែលបានទទួលក៏ដូចជាប្រាប់ថាអូចង់ចូលរួមអានេះគេធ្វើយ៉ាងបាន
Sometimes the invited participant or guest had told us that, oh, we could not attend or participate in the conference because we are very busy. But some people who were not invited said, yeah, we are willing to attend this because why not us?
ច
ចា៎ដូច្នេះព័ត៌មាននេះខ្ញុំសូមជូនទាំងអស់គ្នាតាមស្រាប់ថានេះហើយជាបញ្ហាដែលយើងពិបាកតិចចំពីព្រោះយើងត្រូវគិតទៅដល់កៅអីដែលទីកន្លែងអង្គុយយើងត្រូវគិតទៅដល់ពីបញ្ហាតិចចំទទួលខាងផ្នែកអាហារណាដូច្នេះអានេះយើងត្រូវតែតំណចំនួនយើងមិនអាចផ្សាយទៅទៅបាន
So please recognize these problems, and we have to recognize that the places or the seat are very limited in a conference such like that.
ខ្ញុំសោកស្ដាយដែរសូម្បីតែជាខាងអត់បងមានអង្គការមួយដែលល្បីខ្ញុំបានផ្ញើសម្បត្តិទៅដល់ហើយខាងស្វែងរៀងខ្ញុំក៏អត់បានឃើញមកប៉ុន្តែខ្ញុំបានឃើញតែខាងកំពង់ធំមក
I would also bring to your notice that we have invited the local NGO in Hong the famous one, and also in Swahili, but those two are not being here, and they are participating, but only for this coming from Hong Kong.
ចា៎ដូច្នេះសូមមេត្តាជាអំពីព័ត៌មាននេះថាយើងចង់បានមែនទែនដើម្បីជាកិត្តិយសទៅដល់ស្ត្រីក្នុងពុទ្ធសាសนาគឺថាអង្គការចូលរួមច្រើនប៉ុន្តែពេលខ្លះយើងប្រហែលជាអត់បានទៅចិត្តយល់ទាំងអស់ទេ
So please be informed. Actually, we want to give great honor to all those nuns and deacons who are living Buddhism, and we want to invite all of them, but actually everything is very limited.
ខ្ញុំគិតថាពេលនេះយើងស្ទើរតែឃើញព័ត៌មាននេះប៉ុន្តែនៅពេលដែលសន្និសីទនេះចប់ហើយពេលដែលអស់លោកអ្នកអញ្ជើញត្រឡប់ទៅកាន់ប្រទេសអ្នកវិញខ្ញុំគិតថានឹងមានមនុស្សជាច្រើនជួបខ្ញុំថាអូសប្តាហ៍ណាស់បានចូលរួមក្នុងសន្និសីទនេះ
And for just few days during this conference, you have heard that only very few people complain about their not being participating in this conference. But when you are going back to your countries, maybe so many more will come to me and complain the same thing.
សូមអរគុណ
Thank you.
So, did everybody understand? The Kasaki Gita conferences are always open to all. All events on this program are open not only to registered participants, but to all men and women of Cambodia. The doors are open. Okay, so that includes the Sakya Gita meeting. It is open to all. The announcement that was made clearly stated that the voting privilege belongs to those who have expressed their support for Sakya Gita by joining. The membership, those who are members will be eligible to vote. It's $10. If those who cannot afford the membership and have some special circumstance and would like to talk with us, we're open. We're always here to talk to you. So please tell us what your problems are. We want to work on everything so everybody is happy. On this note too, some people have a few questions about their hotel accommodations. I would like to explain again that the hotel accommodations and food, we are barely making our
making costs.
What time was it, Gabriella?
Tomorrow between 8 and 9 o'clock.
The tour tickets are outstanding.
I just wanted to add, with your permission, to what Vendra said about making a profit. Actually, we got gratis visa, which cost $20 for about 91 people or more. In fact, for the first time in Cambodia, they have never had anything like this. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs refused to give because they have never been used to that. I had to personally go and meet with the two first prime ministers to get permission, not the two first prime ministers, the two deputy co-prime ministers, deputy co-prime ministers to get the permission. Because it created a precedent, 90 odd people being given gratis visa. Same thing for getting free entrance to Angkor Wat. You will see on the permission that we got, they have a format only for 24 persons. So far in the history of Cambodia, maybe 24 persons would have been allowed to go on the same trip. I don't know. So they have written 3 forms. We have to carry 3 forms. That too, I had to meet the 2 ministers, Minister of Information and the Minister of Minister of Culture and the Minister of Tourism, get their signatures. So unprecedented so far. And we are saving $60 each one of you. Otherwise, would have had to pay $60 to see Angkor Wat, $20 a day. I just want to add, we have done our best. And to accommodate every wish, not to make a profit at all. In fact, we are still struggling to do our best, and we will continue to do our best even after you leave for your homes. Thank you very much.
So with that, I'd like to invite our speakers for this afternoon to please take their places. I'd like to give a special thanks to Gabriella and Emma, who have been working night and day to arrange the tour. I'd like to thank, we've spent more than $3,000 in postage and fax expenses, and many people have taken these expenses from their own pocket, namely Dr. Norma Pratt and the number 1 helping to arrange for others to attend and donating these expenses from their own side. So I really appreciate it. And I'd like to introduce our moderator for this afternoon, Dr. Elizabeth Harris.
Transforming women's roles in Buddhism, strategies. A very interesting topic for one of our last sessions. And 3 interesting presentations. Touching, I believe, some quite controversial subjects. Now, the first paper is by Dr. Rita Gross. She is not here at this conference, and the paper will be read by Dr. Serenity Young. But first of all, a few words about Dr. Gross. She's Professor of Religious Studies at the University of Wisconsin in the US, and she can be seen as one of the founding mothers of the modern study of women and religion, world religion. She did her doctorate at the University of Chicago on the role of women in Australian Aboriginal religion. Along with Nancy Falk, she edited the first collection of essays on women and world religions. Unspoken Words, the volume was called. More recently, she has written a book which was mentioned in one of our first sessions, Buddhism Beyond Patriarchy, a book I'm sure many of you know. But before I hand over to Serenity, a few words about her. She's a research scholar at the University, the Southern Asian Institute of the Columbia University. She did her doctorate at Columbia, at the university, on the functions of dreams in the Indo-Tibetan biography. She is the editor of an anthology of sacred texts by and about women, and is currently editing the Encyclopedia of Women in World Religions. And I know at present she's spending 6 months in Asia furthering research. She has nothing, of course, to do with the research in Rita's paper, but I hand over to her now to present it.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to read Dr. Gross's paper. I've known Rita for 20 years. This is working? Okay. And admire her work. And this is quite in keeping with the high level of scholarship that she brings, and intelligence, humor, and always provocative. We've had to significantly cut the paper, so I recommend that you do take the time to read it. And I feel that we've done a fair job to get her main points across, but her arguments are much more detailed, and I direct you to the packet. Her paper begins. Among several issues critical to the successful transmission of Buddhism to the West and to women's involvement in that transmission, I have chosen for this context to limit my comments to issues surrounding authority. First, I will discuss alleged misuse of authority by currently empowered spiritual teachers, mainly men. This analysis of alleged abuse of power will be balanced in the second half of this presentation by suggestions regarding models and concepts of spiritual authority appropriate for Western Buddhism, including especially the relationship between women and authority. My comments on authority rest within a larger context. I do not regard the issue of teachers' sexuality to be as central an issue as do some other Western Buddhists. Rather, in my view, the central issue is the development of post-patriarchal feminist patterns of community and post-patriarchal modes of authority. I will be drawing upon my own experience and knowledge as a feminist Buddhist theologian, and I will be directing my comments primarily toward Western Buddhists, both toward explicitly feminist Buddhists as well as those who do not use feminist resources as directly as I do. First, I take up the issue of alleged sexual misconduct on the part of male Buddhist teachers. With extreme reluctance. I do not consider this to be a central issue in the long-term goal of developing post-patriarchal Buddhism. In fact, I would argue that excessive attention devoted to the foreground of teachers' alleged misconduct is diverting much-needed energy from more basic issues, which must be adequately attended to if Buddhism is to be transmitted to the West, and if genuine Western Buddhism, rather than Asian Buddhism hothoused in the West, is ever to emerge. No Buddhist practitioner involved in any major Western Buddhist community can be unaware of this phenomenon. Since the early 80s, alleged misconduct of male teachers has torn apart many prospering North American Buddhist organizations, including the Zen Center of San Francisco, Vajradhatu, the Los Angeles Zen Center, and the New York Zen Center, among others. Though most of these communities are now picking up the pieces and regrouping, controversy and bad feelings have not abated, and many students abandon long-term association with the Dharma Center, apparently for good. My stance is in part dependent on my being the student of Chogyam Trungpa, rather than any other teacher. I say this because, in my view, the crisis precipitating conduct has not been the sexual behaviors themselves, but secrecy surrounding sexual behaviors. Certainly, when Vajradhatu fell apart in 1988 to 1990, it was not over Trungpa's womanizing and drinking, which had been totally common knowledge for years, but over secrecy surrounding sexual activities of his Dharma heir, the Vajra regent Ozul Tenzin. Perhaps I would have been more stung and hurt by the sexual conduct of my teacher if I had been the student of a teacher who gave one appearance in public but acted oppositely in private. When I was deciding whether or not to become Trungpa's student, I knew about his behaviors, though I was never in the inner circle of students who witnessed or participated in them. Quite frankly, initially I was more distressed by his ostentatious and pretentious lifestyle and its cost to his students, who as a group were not wealthy. I literally had to make a decision as to whether my discomfort with his expensive lifestyle was worth keeping me from his brilliance as a Dharma teacher and his ability to illume mind to me. I think everyone who accepts a spiritual teacher has to make such a decision, though the specifics are different for each teacher-student relationship. My reasons for not pouncing on teachers' alleged misconduct as the central problem for Buddhist women circle around two issues. The first is to question what a guru or spiritual teacher is or is not, which is closely connected with the question of what a guru could be expected to provide for students. Second, I will question whether one can suggest that women should not or cannot consent to certain kinds of sexual activities if they also want to function as self-determining adults, in not expecting someone I can completely model myself after, someone who will never disappoint me, or someone who is always wise. Since I have not yet met a guru who thoroughly understands, manifests, or has assimilated feminism into his or her being, it has always been obvious to me that the guru is not the perfect, infallible authority on all issues. This is not to say that no gurus are sympathetic to feminism. In my view, much of the disappointment many people express about their teacher's conduct results from theistic expectations of the guru, from confusing the guru with God, or from longing for him or her to be the perfect mummy or daddy one never had. It is also my view that the demand for a perfect guru is, in practice language, an absence of resistance, a phenomenon well known to every meditator and meditation instructor, as one of the tricks of the habitual mind or ego in the Buddhist sense to protect itself from deconstruction and freedom. The demand for a perfect guru is resistance in the form of the statement, unless I find a guru and a spiritual scene that I totally approve of, I won't practice meditation with them. I do not think that there is a spiritual teacher out there who is also a perfect, flawless role model in every regard, whatever that might be. I would suggest that the quest and the demand for such a teacher are quite immature, and that the student's rejection of a teacher who is not perfect says more about the student than about the teacher. So, if teachers are not authorities on all issues and cannot with, every teacher with whom I have worked would say the same thing in his or her own words. A teacher also understands the skillful means, the meditation practices, to bring a student to penetrating insight into his or her own unsullied mind, and can transmit those practices and instruct the student regarding them. These are the things I sought and seek from my teachers, for my feminist view and practices did not give me sufficient access to them. I do not have to approve every nuance of a teacher's behavior to respect and learn from them, because I do not expect them to be the all-wise, and I do not expect them to model for me all aspects of my life. My assertion that the guru is not the authority on all issues does not conflict with the devotion to the guru that is so important in Vajrayana Buddhism and some other forms of Buddhism. One is required to appreciate and follow the guru's meditation instructions, but one is not required to worship or imitate his or her lifestyle. Devotion is not blind hero worship, but rather intelligent application of the teacher's methods and messages. I also reject the frequent comparison of sexual encounters between spiritual teachers and their students to sexual contacts between bosses and secretaries or between professors and students. Most especially, I reject the comparison of the guru-student relationship to the therapist-client relationship, which is so inegalitarian that sexual relationships would almost always be exploitative. I reject both elements in this comparison. The guru is not a therapist, and the meditation student is not a therapy client. It cannot be claimed that sexual relationship between a spiritual teacher and a student must be inappropriate and exploitative, though under certain conditions such a relationship might be exploitative and inappropriate. Such a relationship could also be mutual and mutually enriching, and in some cases surely has been, as has been attested to by some women I know. I am extremely troubled by the development in recent feminist discourse to proclaim women as victims in such sexual encounters and to seek to make rules that would protect women from such victimization. I am troubled because this move is directly counter to the basic feminist drive to define women as adult human beings who have a right to make their own choices. I see no way in which we can affirm both that women are self-determining adults and that adult women cannot be trusted to make their own decisions regarding relationships with so-called powerful men, but must be protected from sexual advances from such men. Formerly, women were often coercively paired with powerful men. Now, some would forbid such pairings under any circumstances. But either rule equally denies the agency of women. There is not much difference between telling a woman that she must become the sexual partner of a certain man and telling her that she should not or cannot become his partner. Rather than making it almost impossible for men to make sexual advances without facing the possibility of sexual harassment charges, we need to encourage women's self-esteem so that they do not feel pressured by offers that are unattractive to them. And of course, women must be protected unconditionally from the negative consequences that can come with refusing a sexual proposition in a patriarchal context. But if a spiritual teacher and his or her student accept each other's invitation to sexual activity, it is quite unfair for the student later to claim that he or she was a victim of sexual abuse. Nor could the student claim that they expected the relationship to proceed like a conventional romance. Only the most naive person could have begun a sexual liaison with someone like Trungpa, expecting that he was entering into a permanent romantic relationship with her. For these reasons, I am reluctant to make blanket condemnations of teachers who have sex with their students, but would suggest that only under certain circumstances are such encounters abusive and inappropriate. If teachers are bound by vows of celibacy, obviously they should not be engaging in sex with their students. If a teacher were to withhold Dharma instruction or transmissions unless the student engaged in sex, or if the teacher were to insist that a sexual relationship is necessary to the student's spiritual practice, these would be serious problems and should be dealt with as such. They would indeed constitute sexual abuse. If the teacher has a track record of brief relationships with troubled, immature, distraught students, especially those new to Dharma practice, one should become suspicious. In addition, I am skeptical when the teacher practices what I call the patriarchal politics of mate selection, which is to say that the female partner is most often young and conventionally attractive, whatever the age of the male partner. I want to suggest that those who adamantly condemn sexual relationships between spiritual teachers and their students are overly reliant on conventional morality, especially conventional sex ethics, which are often erotophobic and repressive. Since I have never been particularly impressed by conventional standards of sexual morality, I am not quick to judge or condemn the sexual activities of others. What troubles me most about the topic of teachers and their sexual activities is the hold it has on Buddhist practitioners and communities. Many people seem to have a great deal of trouble practicing the Buddhist virtues of equanimity and detachment when discussing their teachers' sex lives. The way people nurse and hold grudges is not at all in a Buddhist way of working on issues. And I would like to make an appeal to the feminist principle of choosing our battles wisely, because we can't fight them all. I consider the independent issues of community and authority to be much more basic to the well-being of Buddhism in the West. And here begins part 2 of her paper, which is the issues of hierarchy and authority in modern dispersed authority among more people have occurred. Therefore, this is a very provocative time at which to suggest that I think the most important issue for Buddhist women is the transmission of spiritual authority to female gurus. Indeed, on some occasions when I have introduced the issue, women have adamantly insisted that guruship is an inherently corrupt phenomenon and should have no place in post-patriarchal Buddhism. Thinking that all the parts of the tree should be equal and therefore equally exposed to the earth or sky is not helpful. But nothing in the concept of natural hierarchy assumes that whatever hierarchies we may currently experience exemplify natural hierarchy. In fact, since most conventional hierarchies we experience are based on irrelevant and arbitrary criteria, such as gender, race, class, sexual orientation, and so on, rather than on learning, discipline, accomplishment, and wisdom, they are most certainly unnatural hierarchies. On the other hand, people can find their niche at which they are most comfortable, most productive, and most able to contribute to society. Natural hierarchies are also fluid hierarchies, in the sense that no one is always in the center, and most people will be in the center at some point. In some situations, I will be in a middle position, in others, in a bottom position, and in others at the top of the current hierarchy. Sometimes I serve, and sometimes I direct, depending on what needs to be done and on my abilities, achievement, and training. All roles are valuable as learning experiences. Could find our niches in the tree of life. Some of us would become spiritual leaders, among other things. The fact that this is such a rare occurrence demonstrates quite clearly that most of the hierarchies we live are at least partially unnatural hierarchies and therefore deserve to be challenged. In patriarchal systems, by definition, women are forbidden to hold authority, though feminist research shows that they often wield considerable power nonetheless. Since the defining trait of patriarchy is formal male control of the society, clearly women who hold formal authority would fundamentally contradict the system. With some exceptions, Buddhism has followed this patriarchal norm throughout its history. Thus, there is no question that Buddhism cannot become post-patriarchal until women wield authority in Buddhism. However, that comes to be defined and structured eventually in Western Buddhism. That is one of the reasons why I claim that the presence of female gurus is so crucial as the central issue for Western Buddhist women. The transition point when women finally achieve authority to Western Buddhism is, however, fraught with another grave danger. Earlier, I expressed my longing to see a female feminist lineage holder in my lineage within my lifetime. That second word is crucial. Unfortunately, in many systems, the first women to achieve authority are clones of the men who have always held authority, which solves almost nothing. As many in academia have learned, many a non-feminist female dean or chancellor is worse than many a male dean or chancellor. Why this is so is quite clear. A system that has functioned under unnatural hierarchy for millennia cannot be basically healthy. Therefore, merely putting a woman in charge does almost nothing. Using the analogy of the treehouse with the sign, "No girls allowed," I often suggest to my students that just getting into a messy, dilapidated treehouse is not enough. It needs to be cleaned up and restructured, which is why it is so critical to have not only female, but feminist gurus involved in the transmission of Buddhism to the West and the transition to post-patriarchal Buddhism. We have now come full circle. When non-celibate women become gurus, in a sense, the shoe will be on the other foot. I would predict that some of the same behaviors that are so troubling when done by men will also occur with female gurus, because the teacher-student relationship, in my view, always includes passion that can become erotic. How will we handle the inevitable yearnings that develop between teacher and student when the teacher is female and the student lover is male, or perhaps female? Conventional morality and prurience are not the answer, nor are the excesses or the secrecies of some male gurus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serenity, for taking us through that. Some controversial issues, and we will have chance to discuss these in smaller groups later. I suggest that one of the major themes that comes out of Rita's paper is our attitude to external authority, our attitude to hierarchy, what kind of hierarchy we want. Our next paper concerns perhaps the inner authority. Venerable Tenzin Palmo will speak on inner transformation for world peace. She was born in London and went to India in 1964, where she became a nun. She stayed there 6 years, and then that was followed by 18 years near Ladakh in a place called Lahul. Then she moved to Italy, to Assisi. In 1993, she came back to Asia. So someone who has traveled widely, teaching and practicing. It was in 1973 that she gained higher ordination in Hong Kong. So I now hand over to Venerable Tenzin Palmo.
So, Venerable Bhikkhus, Bhikkhunis, and Dharma brothers and sisters. So, in fact, I feel slightly intimidated sitting up here because I have noticed that up to now, everybody sitting up here has come very well prepared with their papers, and which they probably worked for days, weeks ago. And up to this moment, I actually don't know what I'm going to talk about. So along with you, we'll see what comes out. When I looked at the title today of what I'm talking about, it's Inner Transformation for World Peace. It seemed to me that the whole of the lecture would be, well, eradicate delusion, anger, and desire, and then there will be world peace. And that's it. What more is there to say? But if I have to take this talk for 15 minutes, then there are one or two points I would like to make. First of all, we inhabit the world which we ourselves have prepared for ourselves to inhabit. In other words, the whole universe is held together by the collective karma of the beings who inhabit that world. So therefore, the kind of world which we are experiencing today is the result of all the karma of body, speech, and mind, which has been already seeded from the past. So therefore, if we are continually creating the causes of violence through our unskillful karma of body, speech, and mind, we cannot expect that there is going to be peace. Do you understand? I mean, it's not enough just to make a proposal saying from now on we're all going to get together and hold hands and be peaceful, because already the causes have been created for a very aggressive society. And our present society in which we live now is absolutely devoted to propagating the three unwholesome karmas. You know, our society is based on greed and violence. Even our entertainment is based on greed and violence. And that being the case, how can we hope that overnight there will be peace just because we get together and mouth platitudes? I mean, we take, for example, a very simple thing like the amount of meat we eat in the world. Now, all these animals which are raised and in often intolerable conditions and then slaughtered, I mean, we are talking about millions of animals every day. Now, that karma of killing all these animals because of our greed, we have to see the results of that karma. And even little children, when they sit down 2 or 3 years old in front of a television, even just to watch cartoons for children, it's all about people blowing each other up. You must have all seen these kind of cartoons. And so then the children, I mean, I sometimes stay with lay people, they have small children, 2 or 3 years old. Their idea of playing, both the girls and the boys, is to do kind of kung fu or blow each other up with various, I mean, anything they pick up, of course, they go bang, 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 and pretend to kill each other. So what I'm saying is that if we have those kind of traces in our mind, which our society very much encourages, then we cannot expect that tomorrow there is going to be universal world peace. We are not making the causes for that. I mean, even peace organizations are so often based on aggression. I remember one time seeing an interview with John Lennon, who was, for those of you who don't know, he was one of the Beatles, and he became very popular during the 60s and 70s for advocating about peace causes. But as he was talking about peace, he was getting so angry and so aggressive, and his whole face was just so mad, and just this whole us, so perfect, against them, the enemy. And so, of course, he was just creating war, because what is war about except us against them? So then, if even the peace organizations have this kind of mentality, where is the peace? What can I say? I mean, what I feel is that there is no simple solution. I mean, I do feel that the Buddhist way is perfect and very pure. And if we can practice it in our heart and not just in our head and our mouth, then it is a perfect transformatory path. But it is difficult. And we have seen how difficult it is, because we can see how few people really have been transformed by this message. Even though outwardly it looks like it's a Buddhist country and everyone's going to the temples and they're taking temporary ordination and it looks very good. But as soon as there is some excuse for this mad savagery, it all just comes bubbling out. So what a question, I really don't know what the answer is. Of course, the answer is to really take the Buddha Dharma to heart and to really practice and to completely purify our minds of these terrible, terrible stains. But how we can give this to the people that they are able to do this I do not know. I mean, throughout Buddhist history, it has always been a very individual thing. A few individuals have really worked at themselves and really transformed their hearts. The fact that this could happen on a worldwide scale is hard to believe. I mean, perhaps what we need are some very, as Plato actually said, we need some very enlightened leaders. Maybe this is the problem. Our leaders are personifications of delusion and anger and desire. I mean, Gandhi, as an example, for all his shortcomings, was a leader who, in some ways, was quite selfless. At least he really believed in nonviolence. And through him, he was able to perpetuate a mass movement. I mean, in India, which is the most undisciplined place in the world, he actually managed to get people really believing in this and really being nonviolent under the most extreme provocation. So it's possible. So far, there have been very few Gandhis in the world and many, many more Pol Pots. I don't know what the answer is on a worldwide level. This is talking about world peace. I mean, I do believe that if some genuinely spiritual beings could get into some genuine power and had the charisma to move people, something could really happen. But without that, I don't have too much hope. But I hope that there are going to be lots of people who are going to stand up and immediately refute this pessimism and show me how completely wrong I am. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Theme. Gabrielle Kusterman has been a Buddhist for 13 years and is a member of the Tibetan Center in Hamburg. She has passed a 7-year systematic study program of Buddhist philosophy, of Vinaya, Tantra, and Lamrim, with her teacher, Geshe Tubten Nawang. She now earns her living in a family business company dealing with green coffee from Central America. So I hand over to Gabriella to speak on sexual conduct and misconduct.
Venerable Bhikkhus, Venerable Bhikkhunis, respected nuns, dear friends from all over. Venerable Tenzin's talk should have been the last one and not mine, to finish off this session in such a splendid way. May I read my paper, because I'm not so fluent in English to do it like this. The Buddha taught ethical guidelines that applies to beginners, advanced practitioners, as well as enlightened beings. These ethical guidelines are incorporated whether implicitly or explicitly, in all the Buddhist teachings. By keeping precepts, Buddhist teachers, monks, nuns, and lay people are those who by vocation are serving as an example to society by demonstrating the wholesome effect of leading a wholesome life. Therefore, naturally, they are expected to abide by the precepts, and any failure to do so leads to an uneasiness among the lay people and could ultimately lead to weakening of their belief in the Buddhist way of life. Gradually, it could cause their respect for the monks and nuns to melt like snow in the sun, rapidly diminishing the power for good that the Buddhist teachings still could have. So anyone who becomes a monk, nun, or Buddhist teacher must be aware of the enormous responsibility they take upon their shoulders when choosing this way of life. Lay Buddhists, of course, should also try hard to lead a wholesome life. But if they fail at it, the psychological damage they cause to other members of society is not as severe as failures occurring among those who are ordained. What are the ethics that Buddhists are trying to practice? Buddhists start by taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. In the Vajrayana tradition, the main object of refuge is said to be the living teacher, who incorporates all the three jewels. At the same time, we are taught that taking refuge in a sensible way means entering a spiritual way of life, taking responsibility for ourselves, and becoming aware of the causes and of unhappiness and lasting happiness. Having taken your how does this translate for Western monks, nuns, teachers, and lay Buddhists? Here I concentrate on Western Buddhists, as I am myself a Western Buddhist and do not wish to investigate the behavior of Buddhists in Asian societies. However, I cannot exclude a discussion of Asian Buddhist teachers because we Buddhists in the West are in contact with both Western teachers and Asian teachers. That is, Asian teachers living in the West and teaching young Western Buddhists who grew up in a predominantly materialistic Judeo-Christian society. For a man or a woman from such a society to become a Buddhist monk or nun is an extraordinary decision. The majority would look upon it as exotic and ask many questions. What is their motivation? What are their basic ethics? Do they intend to proselytize? How do they in the West include both fully qualified teachers trained in traditional Asian settings and also their Western disciples who support them, translate for them, orient them to Western life, and organize Buddhist centers for them? This group of disciples has a very difficult task, especially if they choose to emulate their teacher by becoming a monk or nun. Let us take a typical scenario. A male Buddhist teacher comes to the West on the invitation of a group of men and women who wish to receive Buddhist teachings from a qualified teacher. This teacher, sent by an organization or monastery in Asia, wishes to spread Buddhism to interested Westerners, at the same time to help his people materially and sometimes, as with the Tibetans, Vietnamese, and Cambodians, politically. Because they have in-depth knowledge of the political situation and sufferings of their people, they raise their students' awareness of the need for freedom in their countries. Their students, ingrained with the same sense of social responsibility due to their own Judeo-Christian cultural backgrounds, naturally adopt these causes espoused by their teacher and begin organizing political support groups, raising donations for welfare activities to benefit refugees both in Asia and in the West. Needless to say, despite the mutual core interest in the Buddhist teachings, cultural differences and misunderstandings between teachers and students may arise along the way. These difficulties become especially obvious if the Asian teacher does not speak a Western language and is dependent upon certain members of the inner circle who are responsible for interpreting his wishes and ideas. Without these interpreters, the teacher would be unable to fulfill his mission and might return to Asia, leaving a large group of followers alone and without guidance. Westerners particularly admire a teacher who teaches not only with words, but through being a good example. A fully qualified teacher, rare to find, who is a good role model is held in high esteem. But becoming a Buddhist and being a Buddhist does not necessarily mean that we are saints. Human beings are constantly challenged by their shortcomings, and Buddhist groups are especially challenged to cope with the human tendencies to admiration, overestimation, wishful thinking, expectations of ideal behavior, and sexual attraction, particularly to teachers. From the side of teachers and members of the inner circle, there may also be a temptation to misuse of power because of incidents of misconduct that have already occurred in Buddhist circles. Several centers have made pioneering efforts to formulate codes of ethics to guide interactions of Western Buddhists in these crucial formative stages. Prominent among these are guidelines drawn up by members of the San Francisco Sand Center, Insight Meditation Society, and the Buddhist Peace Fellowship in Berkeley. These codes are not meant to replace traditional Buddhist ethical guidelines, but to supplement them. Sexual attraction, being one of the deepest human instincts, may be the most difficult to acknowledge and deal with. For this reason, we may deny it, disguise it, or postpone dealing with it until the situation becomes dangerously out of control. All human beings, male and female, lay and ordained, are vulnerable to sexual desire. Therefore, we must all exert effort to avoid harmful relations. Because women are vulnerable to assault, they need to be especially aware and avoid such relationships, particularly with teachers, regardless of how these teachers may explain